Okay, so now you know what this thing looks like with your first coat, and if you're seeing any elements of shadowing or things telegraphing through, have no concern, no worries. Your second color coat is going to cover all those flaws and variations magnificently and perfectly and flawlessly. And to add to that masking of anything that has been in way of a flaw telegraphing through your first color coat, you'll be able to cover that with casting the color chips into the second coat. So we're going to review that now, how to apply that second coat, along with the tools again, and the only added element there are going to be the color chips and the cleats that you're going to be using in casting the color chips into your second color coat while it's wet. And so enjoy these a few moments that you'll learn how to do this with the color chips. If you're doing that, if not, this simplified by just simply putting on the second color coat if you want just a solid color finish. So enjoy this moment of your last color coat and color chips. Really the hard work is done after this segment in segment 7 here. All right, let's begin by ordering the color chips that you have selected or want to select to put into your floor. This is a basic color chart that we use you can refer to. This will be available to you in your PDF downloads, or you can just go online and get a myriad of selection of color flakes that you might prefer that these may not offer. Once you've got those already in place and you've got them ready to mix, this is how we do it. If you're using a combination of color flakes, we like to mix them in between, back and forth in between a couple of 5-gallon buckets. This way you can get consistency and they can be really thoroughly distributed so you don't have any heavy concentration of one color as opposed to another. Until that is all done, you'll mix everything that you want to use totally in these 5-gallon buckets. And once that's completed, then you're going to take and just break it up into a 2-gallon bucket to make it easier going out onto the floor and casting them onto the floor. It's just not as bulky as carrying a 5-gallon bucket. These next 4 clips are to give you a feel for how many pounds of the color flakes you're going to want to order for your project, depending on how much coverage you would like to have on your floor, whether it be light, medium, heavy, or full coverage. Next, we're going to make sure we have all of our tools lined up before we mix up any epoxy. And once those are all into place and you're ready to go, then these are the tools close up. This is the brush you'll be using on your foundation wall if you have a foundation or stem wall. This is the 18-inch nap roller cover and the frame and the pole that's going to be assembled together, and this will be a quicker way of being able to cover more square footage on your floor. This is what they look like when it's put together. You're going to mix your product. You can use an electric drill if you want. We prefer just using a cordless drill, and we like to use this 16-inch by 3-inch grout mixer to do that with. This is a 9-inch roller cover frame. These are the roller covers. We like to use the 3/8-inch nap just to try to keep it so the profile is pretty low. Now we're going to get our tools all lined up. This is a 4-inch latex paintbrush. These are the paint tray liners. We like to use the liners because we can just throw them away and don't worry about having to throw away the actual metal paint tray itself. This is what we're going to use for our vertical and horizontal steps and foundation work. We like to use a 3/8-inch nap so you can get a good texture and not have too much material causing any texture variations. You'll see how the cardboard comes into play here in a second. Knee pads if you need a little support for your knees. Gloves, you can use these nitrile gloves, or you can use rubber gloves, or you can use leather gloves, or whatever you're comfortable with. And then the spiked shoes, you got to have these to be able to go out onto the epoxy while it's wet. We're going to get these pre-fit to our foot before we begin putting down the epoxy. So once you get these all adjusted to your shoe, then you know you can go out there in confidence without them coming off in the middle of all of it. That's going to be a mess if that happens. So set those aside until you get everything all in line. We're going to attach our 4-inch brush onto a pole, 6-foot pole or 8-foot pole, whatever's comfortable for you. This will help you from bending over all the time to get up along edges, and also in all of the control joints if you have them in a garage floor, for example, or a shop floor that you're working on. So we just kind of jerry-rig this with the tape so that you essentially are being able to extend yourself onto the floor without bending over. We're ready now to begin mixing the epoxy. This procedure doesn't take very long. It's a water-based product that we've provided for you. Also, we're referring you to that in the PDF as well if you want to get the same product. You don't have to use the product that we're recommending, but we're just telling you that this is user-friendly product. This is a simple 6-inch margin trowel that we're using to scrape out the inside of the bucket to get all the product out of it. Now we can begin to mix up the second coat of the epoxy. You're going to just go through the exact same steps as the first coat as you applied, and this is just a sped up version of doing all that on a different project. Once that's all mixed up, then you're going to do exactly the same thing once again. You'll break this out into a smaller container just so you're not having to lug around a 5-gallon bucket. In this example here, we're just simply using the same bucket that the epoxy was packaged in. So now we're going to get our paint tray liner inserted into our metal paint tray itself for this next round of epoxy. We're going to have this cardboard as well ready to go, and you'll see how to use that here now as we proceed to put the epoxy and the flakes simultaneously onto the foundation wall. You'll notice here that I'm using the 6-inch roller now for this second coat on the foundation wall, whereas in the first coat we were using the brush to fill in all of the air pockets in the foundation. You can see here in this demonstration I'm using the cardboard to shield the epoxy from getting down onto the floor itself, and that way when I cast in the chips it's not going to stick in the floor. This way you can reuse the color chips and it's not going to have any issues balling up if you were to mix them up into your bucket of already clean color flakes. So you can see here as I'm going along, I'm sweeping up after I put it on the wall. I'm just doing it in 4-foot sections, which is as long as the cardboard. I've slowed this process down so you can kind of see in a little bit more detail how it is that we're casting this onto a vertical foundation wall. I like to go behind it now with this 12-inch taping knife. They typically use this in the sheetrock industry. I can pull it off of the wall really quickly with this and give it a nice clean line, and I'm not confusing that at all with any of the color flakes that I've cast up on the wall itself. Once that's all cleaned up, and you can move yourself along. We're going to use the same setup here with the paint tray liner and the steel paint tray to use doing the steps if you have steps that you're going to be applying the product on. For example, if you have a garage entry that looks like this, you're essentially using all of the same tools. You don't need your cardboard anymore, but now you're still using the same 6-inch roller setup that we showed you earlier on doing the foundation wall. It's a good practice just to go 4 to 6 feet at the most in applying the epoxy so that you can still cast the color chips into it while it's nice and wet. That way you get good adhesion and your pattern will reflect through just the way you're casting it in the surface. Now we're just simply going to go behind all of that work on the vertical and get it all cleaned up. And then we're ready to start prepping here now and getting ourselves in a position to apply the epoxy over the horizontal surface portion of your project. In this case here, it's a garage floor with these control joints in it. As I'm demonstrating here, you go around the perimeter of the area that you're going to be working on. This is convenient on this garage floor because it's got 8 by 8 sections that are divided up pretty evenly, and I know that I can get a section of this done in an ample amount of time to be able to cast the chips into it. And you can see here, you're just trying to prevent anything in overflowing down into the control joint. You've already got it filled in with the brush. Now we're just using, essentially we're using the 18-inch roller frame and cover as a squeegee. This way we're preventing the epoxy from rolling down into the control joint and just creating a puddle there, and also making it look uneven and not a real clean, streamlined finish. Do everything you possibly can to prevent any windrows, roller marks, or other variations in the epoxy so it looks neat and clean. And so you'll go over this multiple times as demonstrated here to make sure you get uniformity. Then you're ready to go out into it with your cleats on your shoe, and you can cast in the pattern that you want to distribute. And you can decide if you like it random or if you kind of want it distributed as evenly as you possibly can. I like to try to get it as balanced as much as possible. A lot of folks like the randomness kind of a look, but I like consistency so it looks uniform just because that's my preference. But you may have yours and you can do it any way you want because it's your floor. Something noteworthy here is you'll notice that there's a slight little bit of overcast that goes into the dry portion of the floor. We don't care if a few of these chips go past the line where your epoxy is. They'll all just be covered anyway. As you can see demonstrated here, we're going to cover those chips that fell over into the dry portion with my roller, and you would never know the difference. It'll all be hid with the cast over the top of those, and so you never see it reflecting through. So just keep that in mind. So now these next few segments are basically just fast forwarding through this whole process, repeating it over and over again. You'll take it one section at a time, divide it up so it's evenly distributed so that you have time enough that you can get out onto the epoxy while it's wet to get a good adhesion with your color chips that are going to be cast into it, and give you time enough to get the pattern that you want. So now just a word of caution with the cleats. If they're metal cleats, you got to be super careful because now that you have that first coat of epoxy on the floor, it becomes fairly slippery. And that means that you cannot take very wide steps or long strides, and it'll put you off of balance, and before you know it, you'll put yourself on the floor really super quickly. So to do this with baby steps, do it with caution, and you can see that I'm very precocious about how I'm keeping my feet close to one another so that my balance and alignment's pretty much in line with my whole body, so I'm not out of balance. That pretty much covers most of the details, and you can observe here with the remaining video footage here what it is you need to do to get a great job on your particular epoxy project. Have fun with this. Whatever you do, just don't stress out too much. And one other little pointer that might be helpful is to be aware of the weather. If you're doing a garage floor or you have any of your epoxy project exposed to the weather, you'll want to make that noteworthy. Any wind and debris, leaves and dirt and dust are something that you really want to consider getting blown into your project and affecting the long-term aesthetic appeal of the project. So also, you don't want this to get wet, so make sure you have a clear forecast and try to get as calm and low a wind element in the forecast as possible too. But other than that, of course, temperatures, there is one other than that. Temperatures play into this and factor into the dry time. The colder it is, the longer it takes for the product to dry, and the hotter it is, the faster it's going to cure, and it makes it a little bit more difficult because then it becomes a bit of a chase trying to get the color chips cast into the surface in time before the product actually begins to cure and set up. And so then you'll get kind of a blotchy, patchy look, if that makes sense. So try to time it so that you got good weather forecast conditions in your favor and that you can put it to good use so that you can make your job go along as smoothly as possible. I'll leave you alone now to finish this out in these remaining few moments of the footage so you can see this garage floor project completed. Thank you so much for your patience and entertaining me with all of my dialogue. I hope it's not been boring, but rather more educational and helpful for you to be able to do a real beautiful and effective and satisfactory epoxy coating project, whatever it is that you have in mind. This is probably the most common of epoxy coatings is garage floors. It really does make it super nice for them, for a floor like this, to have this type of a finish, as it makes it so easy to clean. It doesn't reflect so much of the dirt on just a regular concrete finished floor. And I think there's some aesthetic beauty to it as well, and makes it a really nice finish for all of your indoor concrete on your property. So enjoy the process, have a good time, and may the force be with you. I'll be back to share with you my final comments. I just couldn't help myself but to repeat this. Notice that this is some of the overcast of the chips onto the dry side. Don't let that worry you or concern you, just as long as it's not too excessive. You can see here how that covers over really nicely. So don't get too anxious about that, and it helps you to keep your project going along smoothly without having to stop and start to clean up even just a few flakes that may be overcast into the dry side. It all gets covered, and it's going to blend in, and you'd never know that they were covered over in the overall project. Here's a close-up of the epoxy floor completed now with the color flakes and the overall project. So that concludes segment 7 of our epoxy color coating course and instruction. I hope that you enjoyed the footage there, and now that you've become educated in how to put that second coat down, and if you're going to include the color chips, it's going to turn out magnificent. You're going to just love it. Even if you make a mistake with the color chips, it still turns out awesome. There's nothing to prevent you from going back over it if you choose to. If it is you want to fill in some areas that you didn't feel like gave you the balance that you wanted to. But otherwise, now we're going to move into the segment 8 of the epoxy training course, where we're going to apply the finish coat and the clear coat, and your project will be done then. So we'll look forward to seeing you in segment 8 of applying the clear and finish coat of your epoxy coating.